Winning Blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Welcome, you are in the lab room on this Christmas Eve special edition of In the Lab Room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Monday, lot to get to. A lot of good football over the weekend. Again, it's coming down the stretch. And as I've already said before, it's really not a lot to say anymore. I mean, the play on the field speaks for itself at this point. So I'm not going to give you a lot of chit chat here. I'm just going to get straight to the play on the field. And so we'll go straight into the weekend that was and go slate skating and get into the games on Sunday and Saturday. Of course, we had a Saturday game as well. And really go over these games, comb over them, get to who helped themselves this weekend, who really hurt themselves, and who's done. I mean, because the picture is crystal clear in the AFC in terms of who's getting in and who's not. That's done. Now we're just seeding in the AFC. Meanwhile, in the NFC, there's still a lot to sort out. So let's get into the weekend that was and go slate skating.
In the lab room presents
The weekend.
the weekend that was.
We're slate skating. We're slate skating. We're slate skating. We're slate skating.
So first up, there was Saturday night football this weekend. So no Thursday night game, no Monday night game, a Saturday game, and a Sunday night football game. The Saturday night game was the last Monday night matchup. Of course, they moved it to Saturday of the season, which featured the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Detroit to take on the Lions. Basically, for the Atlanta Falcons, home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs were on the line. They already locked up their division. They're going to get a first-round bye. Now they had their eyes set on getting home field advantage throughout, and they've earned it. They've been the best team in the NFC record-wise all season long, and so it was only fitting that they took care of business, got it done on the road against a bad Detroit Lions football team. And when you struggle to score points, as the Lions have really done all season long, and it's been all of their own doing, struggling in the red zone, not getting touchdowns, settling for field goals, turning it over, which is what they did in this game, turning the football over, giving a team that's better than you, that's superior to you, more opportunities to score. You're going to lose. You're going to be beaten, and that's what happened to the Lions once again. And this Lions team, this game epitomized their season. Turning it over, giving the other team opportunities to score, and then letting them do so. The Atlanta Falcons don't need your help to score points. They're already an explosive offense. They don't need your help. Lions didn't mind helping them out anyway, just as they did a week ago against Arizona, giving the Cardinals points, allowing the Cardinals to beat them. Bad football teams find ways to lose games, and that's what they did here. One side note, one positive for the Detroit Lions, however, Calvin Johnson did break Jerry Rice's single-season receiving yards record. And I want to see him get 2,000. That'd be a great accomplishment. I mean, 2,000 yards in one season, that is mind-boggling. Would love to see him do it. And really, the goal is right there because who can stop Calvin Johnson? I mean, the Bears are going to be his next opponent. They play some really good defense. And if anyone can stop him from getting, say, 150 yards, which is right around what he needs, is this Chicago Bears defense. But this guy is such an elite talent, a rare specimen. He's a freak on the football field, and I love watching Calvin Johnson play. But this Detroit Lions team, however, they're not good. And the Atlanta Falcons went into Detroit, took advantage of some Detroit Lions turnovers and mistakes, and won this football game, going away 31-18. Lions dropped to 4-11 on the season. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Falcons lock up home field throughout the NFC playoffs, taking their record to 13-2 on the season, and they're done. They can rest players if they like. I don't know what they're going to do and how they're going to approach Week 17, but they're done. They've done everything that they've needed to do to secure home field throughout in the playoffs, get your first round bye. The only thing you don't want to do is rest your players too long, have them take too long of a break, and then try to kick it back into high gear like the Packers did a year ago. Come off of that bye and get beat because your timing is off. So I would advise them to tread lightly here. Play your players for maybe a half in this game. Get them out of there. And make sure you're practicing and keeping guys sharp over that bye week, because you don't want to run into some buzzsaw of a team coming off of an emotional high, winning in wild card weekend. You come out flat and they just steamroll you like the Green Bay Packers had happened to them with the Giants last season. So Falcons get it done. They are your 1 seed in the NFC. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They have locked themselves in to the number 1 seed in the NFC by virtue of the win on Saturday over the Detroit Lions. You look at the next game up on the slate, we go to Sunday. The St. Louis Rams traveled to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. And honestly, I didn't think that St. Louis would be able to go into Tampa Bay and put it to them. I mean, really put the screws to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I didn't think that they were a good enough team to do that. I knew that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had been struggling of late, and they just had came off of a 41-0 thrashing at the hands of the New Orleans Saints on the road. And so hard to recover from those kind of beatdowns. But I said they're going home. This Rams team does not travel well. They're not a good road team. They should be able to go home and get a win against this St. Louis Rams team. What I didn't account for was Josh Freeman continuing to struggle down the stretch. He threw 4 interceptions last week. He threw another 4 in this game. You can't have those things happen if you want to win games in the National Football League. I say it all the time. You can't turn the football over and expect to win in this league. You don't get results when you turn the football over. And so the Buccaneers turned the football over, and you can't win like that in this league. You want to have turnovers? That's one thing. You want to compound matters and have defensive breakdowns where you play cover 2, your safeties flare out and leave the middle of the field wide open. There's no linebackers. There's no one in the middle of the field. It's just absent. And allow the first play of the second half to be an 80-yard touchdown to a tight end. Unacceptable. You lose games that way. You give up a pick 6. You give up an 80-yard touchdown. You're supposed to lose in this league. And that's what happened to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they lost this game to the St. Louis Rams, 28-13. Rams get the victory. And I tell you what, the Rams quietly have put together one heck of a season. They're not going to go to the postseason, but I really didn't expect much out of this Rams team coming into this season. Give a lot of credit to Jeff Fisher. I knew he was going to come in and change the culture in St. Louis. I knew he was going to give them an opportunity to win some games that they probably otherwise wouldn't have a shot at winning. But I didn't see them winning this many games this soon in his tenure as the head coach of the St. Louis Rams. They're 7-1 on the season. I mean, they have a legitimate shot to get to 8 wins on the season, which I thought was so far-fetched before the season started. I didn't think it was possible. 6 was pushing it for me. I thought if they got to 5, they would have a successful season. They're knocking on the door of 8. And so, big win for them on the road. I'll tell you what, Tampa Bay, they're going in the opposite direction. Just a month ago, everyone was sold on the fact that Greg Schiano had this program turned around. Now, all of a sudden, you're not so sure anymore. I'm not sure about a lot of things in Tampa Bay. I am sure of a few things. One, Doug Martin is a legit NFL starting running back. I am sure of that. 2, I am sure that those 2 receivers out there, Mike Williams and Vincent Jackson, will continue to cause havoc around the league for many years to come if they can stay healthy together. And of course, they need a quarterback getting them the football. And that's where my problem lies with this team right now. What is Josh Freeman? Who are you? Who are you? I'm not sure what Josh Freeman is anymore, because I think he's going to suffer from a little bit of that Phillip Rivers syndrome, where you just get comfortable throwing the football up to these big receivers. And all of a sudden you forget that, hey, I have to actually read defenses and make good decisions, make good throws, and not turn it over. And I'm not sure if he can do that. I thought that, a few of these seasons where he might have struggled, he didn't have enough weapons. It was an aberration. It wasn't really indicative of who he was as a quarterback. You continue to do that, though, and now you have weapons. There's no excuses. I'm not sure anymore. And I'm not sure if Greg Schiano really has the pulse of his team either. Last week, you had players trying to fight coaches, coaches trying to fight players. I just don't know about this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team anymore. And so they lose this game. They went from 6-4 to now they're 6-9 on the season. And I don't know if they're going to win another game this season. They could end this season on a 6-game losing streak. I don't know if Greg Schiano has necessarily lost his team or not, but they're not playing good football right now. That is for certain. And they have some things that they have to iron out, things they need to clean up, but there's some talent on this roster. They just need to get their act together and figure out if Josh Freeman is the quarterback that they thought he was, and if not, they need to move on. So you look at the next game on the slate. The Cincinnati Bengals traveled to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers in some old-fashioned AFC North family business. This was a beauty. For those of you who like a lot of offense, this is where you turn away. This is the segment and the portion of the show where you just turn away, because this game wasn't for the faint of heart. If you are an offensive-minded person, then this wasn't the game for you. A lot of defense. And I'll tell you what, everyone wants to talk about the Steelers and what they bring defensively. Let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and what they do defensively. This is a really good defensive ball club. They get it done up front. Geno Atkins, Carlos Dunlap, Michael Johnson, Gathers, Pico. They get it done. They get it done up front, and that's where it all starts with this Bengals defense. And then their secondary isn't too shabby. And they really put the clamps down on this Steelers offense. And really, I had said it on Friday. I've been saying it for the last couple of weeks. The Steelers don't need to go anywhere. I felt that way, but I still thought the Steelers were going to be able to do enough at home to beat a Cincinnati Bengals team that has struggled to beat this Steelers team, period, whether it's home or away. And to ask them to go into Heinz Field and beat the Steelers, thought it was too tall of an order to ask of this team. But the Steelers aren't the same Steelers. And I've been asking, who are you? And they revealed themselves as a team that can't get it done in the clutch. And that's fine. Reveal that now in the regular season so we know who you are, so you don't go to the postseason. That is absolutely, positively, 100% fine. That's exactly what we wanted. Ben Roethlisberger has been a turnover machine since he's come back from this injury. Hasn't been the same Ben. And I know Mike Tomlin doesn't want to hear any excuses. And I'm sure Ben is fine, physically, but mentally, he's not the same guy. He wants to blame Todd Haley for the play calling. You're the guy with the football in your hand making the mistakes, throwing the football. Don't want to hear you complain about any of the play calling. You're the one making the mistakes. Ben Roethlisberger single-handedly cost this team a berth in the playoffs in 2012. I mean, that interception against the Cowboys, that sealed the game. Now, look, you could go back and argue that Antonio Brown's fumble really cost the Steelers that game against the Cowboys. I've listened to that argument because I believe that that fumble changed that game. But Roethlisberger still had opportunities to take his team down the field, and he didn't do it. And then he throws the interception, leads to the Cowboys winning that game, puts the Steelers in a win-or-go-home scenario for the rest of the season. They go home, and they actually don't win, so they stay home. You're done. Your season is over with. And he accounted for basically all of the Cincinnati Bengals points in this game. I mean, you look at the pick six that he threw. Leon Hall makes a fabulous play on a route that Roethlisberger was trying to zip into Heath Miller. He undercuts it, picks it off, makes a couple of moves, gets in the end zone, and it's 7-0. And that was the only touchdown of the day for the Cincinnati Bengals, if you can believe it. Then it's 10-10. And at the end of the game, Steelers are looking to try to go down the field and maybe get a field goal to win it in regulation. But even if you don't, the one thing you can't do is turn it over and give the Bengals a chance to win it in regulation, which is what Roethlisberger did. He rolls out, extends the play, overshoots an open receiver, and throws it right to Reggie Nelson, who picks it off, gets out of bounds. They get a completion to A.J. Green, set up a game-winning field goal attempt. Josh Brown comes in, knocks it home, and the Steelers are losers in this football game. And really, Ben Roethlisberger is to blame. Now, you could blame several different factors. Again, this is not a playmaking defense anymore for the Steelers. They're getting up there in age. They're not making plays, and they're really banged up. There's no Ike Taylor. They're down to their third and fourth and fifth corners out there, but no one wants to hear excuses this time of the year. Everyone's banged up. Everyone's dealing with injuries. And you just got to cope with them the best way you can. And you had opportunities to win this game. You missed a chip shot field goal in this football game. The Steelers did everything that you are supposed to do to lose a game. And so, hence, they lost because they were playing a good team. They weren't playing the Tennessee Titans. They weren't playing the New York Jets where you can get away with making mistakes and still win the game. They were playing a good, solid Cincinnati Bengals team that plays really good defense and has just enough offense to beat you if you want to make mistakes. That's what they did in this game. And the Cincinnati Bengals are now into the playoffs as the 6th seed in the AFC. So now the AFC has its 6 participants, 1-6, in the AFC playoffs that we've come to know and love, that forces you to make mistakes, that takes advantage of your blunders. They're the team making the mistakes, the critical errors at the most critical junctures of the game, and they're losing because of it. And so the Cincinnati Bengals get the win, go to 9-6 on the season, clinch a playoff berth for the 2nd consecutive year. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Steelers missed the postseason as they dropped to 7-8 on the season. So next up on the slate, a game that had absolutely zero playoff implications. Again, probably one of the worst games on the slate in Week 16. It wasn't the worst. There was one actually worse than this, but nonetheless, the Oakland Raiders traveled to Carolina to take on the Panthers. And really, there's not a lot to talk about in this game in terms of what happened on the field, except Cam Newton. And Cam Newton has to realize that there is a perception out there of him that he's this arrogant, cocky, me, look at me type guy, which watching him on the field, you can see that. You know, he gets a first down. He's showboating. He scores a touchdown. He's not celebrating with his teammates. He's celebrating by himself. And so if you want to draw conclusions and draw inferences, you go right ahead. I don't have a problem with him doing what it is he does on the football field, whether it's celebrating by himself or getting in the end zone, doing the Superman. I love all that stuff. But he has to know that there is a perception out there of him that he's a loose cannon type of a guy. And when things aren't going well, he can get down and he'll start to pout. And he's a different guy. And so he has to realize that that light is shining on him at all times. And so he can't slip up. And in this game, he slipped up a couple times. And he can't have that happen. If you're the franchise quarterback, the face of a franchise, you can't do that. And he kicked Tommy Kelly in this game. Tommy Kelly, he was a little rough with him after the play. But Cam, you can't kick people in their face. You can't do that. Luckily enough for him, I don't know how, he didn't get a penalty on this play. He should have been penalized because he absolutely karate kicked Tommy Kelly right in the face after the play was over. So that one, they let it slide. Then he bumps an official later on in the game after he didn't get a call that he wanted. He goes nuts and bumps the official. You can't do that. You cannot do that. And this is the same guy that, you know, people were saying that he was a jerk at the Pro Bowl last year and that he thought he was bigger than everyone else that was there. And Cam has to understand that he's held to a higher standard. And there's already a perception out there that you're a me, look at me guy. And you got to shake that. You have to shake that, and you can't go out there and self-destruct and have episodes where you just lose it for a second. You can't lose it for a second. You have to keep your cool. You are the face of the franchise. You are the franchise QB in Carolina, and so you can't do that. You cannot have those things happen. But on the field, they got it done. They beat the Raiders 17-6. Again, not a lot of fireworks in this game. They did just enough to win. The Raiders are not a good football team. Carson Palmer got hurt in this game. And really, once Carson Palmer got hurt and Matt Leinart had to enter this game, you knew it was check down city. Because who is better than checking the football down in the National Football League than Matt Leinart? There's no one better at checking it down and dinking and dunking you to death than Matt Leinart. So you knew the Panthers were in no danger once Matt Leinart entered this game. And so they won the game 17-6. Panthers go to 6-9 on the season. Meanwhile, the Raiders drop to 4-11. You look at the next game on the slate. The New Orleans Saints traveled to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. A very intriguing matchup in Week 16. We knew this one was going to be good. Still thought the Cowboys would find a way to take care of business. But I was wrong. I thought the Saints set the tone early on. They had a beautiful opening drive. Went down the field, got a touchdown. Held the Cowboys in check for the whole first quarter. And then the Cowboys erupted for 2 straight touchdowns. Romo hooking up with Dez Bryant on 2 consecutive possessions on 58-yard touchdown passes. Looked like the Cowboys were going to ignite offensively and really run away with this one. Because, again, the Saints have been bad on defense all season long. But of late, they've been playing better football on the defensive side of the football. And so, after the 2 touchdowns, they settled in. Dez Bryant wasn't heard of again until later on in the second half. The Cowboys weren't able to do anything offensively. And then the Saints kind of took over from there. And the Saints were really hurting themselves early in this game. Penalties and drop passes really stopped them from putting points on the board and really putting the pressure on the Cowboys early in this game when they had them down. And so a lot of mistakes were being made on the part of the New Orleans Saints. But again, with that kind of offense that they have that's so explosive, with Drew Brees at the helm, you can overcome those things if you don't turn the football over. It's one thing to drop the ball. It's one thing to have a couple of penalties. Don't turn it over, however. Don't give the other team opportunities to do something with the ball in prime scoring position. And they didn't do that. They didn't turn the football over. They let the Cowboys do that. And so they were able to take a lead going into the half, 17-14. They came out in the second half, and they really took it to the Cowboys offensively. They got up on top of the Cowboys 31-17 in the second half after Drew Brees put together some masterful drives. One really was a byproduct of a fumble by DeMarco Murray in his own territory, in Cowboys territory. At about the 5-6 yard line, Saints recover the ball and they go in for a touchdown 3 plays later. So, again, turning the football over will hurt you in this league, especially when you're playing against good teams, good offensive teams like the New Orleans Saints. So the Cowboys found themselves down by 14 with about 6 minutes to go. It looked like they were done. Tony Romo brings the Cowboys back on a furious rally, ultimately culminating in a touchdown to Miles Austin with about 16 seconds left in the game to tie it up at 31 apiece. This game goes into overtime. Cowboys win the toss. They don't do anything with the football. They punt. Saints drive it down. They strip Marcus Colston of the football. It dribbles all the way down to about the 5 yard line. Jimmy Graham pounces on it. Great hustle by him on that play to get to the football first and recover it. Saints kick the field goal. They win this game 34-31. Who fumbles more than Marquise Colston? I don't think anyone in the league fumbles more than him after he catches the ball. I mean, this guy fumbles the ball way too much for my liking, but it benefited the Saints on this occasion. But you can't continue to fumble the ball the way he does. He makes big plays, he taketh away, but this time it actually worked out in the favor of the Saints. They get it done 34-31. No harm done to the Cowboys except they don't have a shot at winning the wild card now. With that loss, their only hope of making the postseason is to win the division. And they still have an opportunity to do that against the Redskins on Sunday Night Football. They moved that game to Sunday night. They flexed it. So they still have an opportunity to win this division. But that's the only way they can make it now. This was a bad loss for the Cowboys. Again, The offense is still playing good ball, but that defense is a lot left to be desired there. And so going to be interesting to see what happens next week and moving forward for this Cowboys team if they can make the postseason. I don't think they need to make the postseason up. Again, I feel like the winner of this division needs to have 10 wins. And if they were to beat the Redskins and they were going into this game with 9 wins and they won next week and they had 10 wins, I tip my cap to them. But now I can't accept a 9-7 division winner. I just don't want to see that occur here. No division right now as it stands in the National Football League has a division winner with less than 10 wins. Either you have 10 or more wins if you've won a division so far in the National Football League. And I don't want the NFC East to be any different than anyone else. Everyone else has a division winner of 10 wins or more. And I think the NFC East needs to be the same way. And so, not just because I'm a Redskins fan. Of course, I want to beat the Cowboys no matter what the circumstance. I don't care if we were 2-12 or we're 8-6 or as we are now, we're 9-6. I want to beat the Cowboys. But I think that this division winner should be a 10-win team. And the Redskins right now are the only team in this division that has the capability of winning 10 games. And so that's what I think needs to happen. I don't think the Cowboys need to go anywhere. They blew this opportunity. And really, they've been living dangerously of late. They should have lost to Cincinnati. They could have lost to Cleveland. They could have lost to Philadelphia. But they didn't. They've been getting it done. They found a way to lose this game, however. And so they've been living dangerous. And I think it's finally going to catch up with them. They don't need to go to the postseason. But they dropped to 8-7 on the season. Meanwhile, the Saints, who started to get their act together defensively just a little too late in the season, now find themselves at 7-8 on the season. This next matchup, I kind of hit this one spot on with my analysis on Friday. I said that this one was probably going to be a blowout. I thought that the Tennessee Titans got away with one by the skin of their teeth on Monday Night Football against a bad Jets team at home. They were playing a really good Green Bay Packers team on the road. You know how I feel about Jake Locker. Can someone tell me what's the difference between Jake Locker and Tim Tebow? Anybody? Any suggestions? Any comments? What's the difference between Jake Locker and Tim Tebow? One's left-handed, one's right-handed. Neither of them are excellent in the pocket. Both are better when they get outside the pocket. Both are better at running than they are passing. What's the difference? Can someone tell me why it is that Jake Locker is getting an opportunity to be a starting quarterback in the National Football League, but Tim Tebow can't? I digress. Anyway, we get to this game, and I knew it wasn't going to be close. And Jake Locker was on full display in this game. And I was once told by a very wise man that need is the worst evaluator of talent. And this is the most prime example of that you will get in your life. Right here. Tennessee Titans needed a quarterback. They went and they reached for Jake Locker. You could argue Jacksonville is another example of that with Blaine Gabbert. But I think this is the best example of that right here. Maybe Christian Ponder too. Who saw Christian Ponder going in the first 15 picks in the draft? So you can see with all three of those quarterbacks being drafted in the same draft class, need is the worst evaluator of talent. And I told you, I don't like Jake Locker as a quarterback in the National Football League right now. Maybe he'll grow into being a better quarterback. He's had his moments. You know, the first half of that Colts game, a couple weeks back, he was sharp. But those are rare occurrences for him. And the Tennessee Titans were outmatched in this game. They were outplayed. And it wasn't even close. It was never close. They never had a shot. And you knew they weren't going to have a shot. And really, they ran into a buzzsaw. This Green Bay Packers team is starting to peak at the right time. They're getting healthier on both sides of the football. They did lose Randall Cobb in this game. He's got an ankle injury. He'll probably be okay. I wouldn't play him in Week 17. They're probably going to get a first-round bye. They have to win next week, but the Packers are playing good football. Really not much to say about this game. The Packers took care of business against a bad Tennessee Titans team. They win this one in a rout 55-0. Woo! That was an ugly showing by the Tennessee Titans. They get beat up. And now, with that win and in conjunction with the 49ers losing later on Sunday Night Football, we'll get to that in a little bit, the Packers are now your 2 seed in the NFC. So they have something to play for in Week 17 now. Before it looked like maybe this game wouldn't mean as much. Now this game has everything riding on it because this is the difference between you possibly not having to play in Wild Card Weekend and you having to play a team like, who knows, the Chicago Bears again. You don't want to play the Bears again if you're the Green Bay Packers. You don't want to see this team again. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. You don't want to play this Bears team again. You don't want to play Minnesota again. That's what it could all boil down to. You lose this game in Week 17 and the Vikings win and they're in because you are playing the Minnesota Vikings in Week 17. You might have to see this very Minnesota Vikings team again. And if they just beat you, now they have momentum. And you don't want to see Adrian Peterson 3 times. You've already seen him once. You're going to see him again next week. You don't want to see him for a 3rd time. He's already ran all over you in Lambeau. He doesn't mind coming back and doing it again. He doesn't mind having an encore performance. So it's imperative that the Packers win this game, get that 2 seed, get that 1st round bye, really go into the playoffs with momentum. Tennessee Titans, they were beat up in every way imaginable. And it's starting to look like Mike Munchak might not keep his job. I really didn't see that coming, but you listen to Bud Adams and you listen to some of the grumblings and rumblings coming out of Tennessee. I'm not sure that Munchak makes it out of this season alive. He could be one of those firings that you just don't see coming. But anyway, Titans drop to 5-10 on the season. Meanwhile, the Green Bay Packers are now 11-4 on the season. And with one more win, we'll lock up the 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. And we'll get a 1st round bye. Amazing enough. A team that really started the season off kind of shaky. The sky was falling. All of a sudden, they run off 8 out of their last 9. And all of a sudden, they're one of the best teams in the NFC. That's what a great quarterback can do for you. So we look at the next matchup. This one was huge. The Minnesota Vikings traveled to Houston to take on the Houston Texans. And myself included, I can't speak for anyone else, but I'm pretty sure a lot of you out there were just like me. You didn't think that Minnesota was just going to trollop into Houston, smack the Texans around, and come out with a W. They made it look so easy. So easy. And Adrian Peterson didn't even go off. The Texans went into this game with one goal in mind. One sole purpose: stop Adrian Peterson. And they got it done. We're talking about over 20 carries, only 86 yards or something around there. He didn't top 100. He didn't have any huge runs. He had a couple of 18, 19-yard runs, but nothing explosive. They really bottled him up in this game. But they let Christian Ponder be solid. And that's what happens when you sell out to stop Adrian Peterson. That's why I can't understand for the life of me why Christian Ponder isn't better. Because teams have to sell out to stop Adrian Peterson. You got to put 8 and 9 in the box. You got to give one-on-one coverage on the outsides. Guys are supposed to be winning one-on-one matchups. He's supposed to be finding Kyle Rudolph wide open in the flats when that play-action fake, when that ball is stuck into Adrian Peterson's belly and then pulled back out. You got to respect that. So he should be finding wide open targets and hitting them. He hasn't been doing that consistently enough for this team, but he did it in this game. 16 of 30, $170. Not overly impressive numbers, but for him, those are just what the doctor ordered. If he can complete 16 passes out of 25 in every game, no interceptions, throw 1 touchdown pass, the Vikings will be in most games that they play. Because if he's not turning it over, they have a shot. Because Adrian Peterson is so dynamic, this defense is really steady. They're going to be in most ball games. But when he's 8 of 17, 8 of 21 for 69 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception, that's when they lose games. And so he was solid in this game. Adrian Peterson did what he usually does, had a Ullman-like workload, got the job done. Defense stood up. And what this game really reinforces is the fact that the Texans are a one-dimensional team. They have to run the ball. If the Texans can't run the football, and the Vikings absolutely shut down Arian Foster in this game. Absolutely stifled any rushing attack by the Houston Texans. And so that made the Texans one-dimensional in this game. And not saying that they can't throw the ball, but their pass is predicated on them having success running the football. If they can't run, their play-action fake means nothing. If their play-action fake isn't working, then their offense isn't working. Their play-action fake is such a big part of what they do, that bootleg. If they can't get the running game off the ground, then this offense isn't flying anywhere. And it was apparent in this game, and in all of their losses this season, that's exactly what has happened to this Houston Texans team. They're being exposed. Stop them from running the football, and you have a legitimate shot at beating this team. They're being exposed, are the Houston Texans, and it happened in this game. They were dominated thoroughly in this game by the Minnesota Vikings. This is the second time the Vikings have thoroughly dominated a really good team. They did it early in the season against San Francisco. They did it again against Houston. You stop teams who are a run-dominant team from running the football, and you got something. And that's what happened in this game, and the Vikings get it done on the road. Surprisingly enough, no one saw this coming. They get it done on the road 23-6 over the Houston Texans, taking their record to 9-6 on the season, keeping their playoff hopes alive. Now with a lot of the things that occurred, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, in Week 16, they control their own destiny now. They came into Week 16 not controlling their own destiny. All they could do was worry about themselves and win. Now they control their own destiny. A win in Week 17 against the Packers at home. They're in the playoffs. I had given up on this Vikings team about 4 weeks ago. When they were 6-6, they were done. They've run off 3 straight victories. They've been impressive in doing so, and now they're on the doorstep of the playoffs. This Vikings team has really gotten it together, and a lot of that credit needs to go to Leslie Frazier. He's kept this team really together with the whole Percy Harvin situation and putting him on IR. And I just thought this season was going to implode, and it didn't. And a huge reason why is because of Leslie Frazier. So the Vikings are now 9-6 on the season. The Texans are 12-3, and they still have a shot at getting home field throughout in the AFC. They just have to win in Week 17 on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. Not an easy task, but one that is very doable for this Texans team. And it'd be a shame if they don't get home field advantage, because one more loss for this Texans team, and they could go from the wire-to-wire #1 team in the AFC Conference to the #3 team on the very last week of the season. And that would be a crushing blow to them. One that I don't think they can overcome. As a matter of fact, if they don't get a first-round bye and they don't get the #1 seed in the AFC playoffs, they're going to lose their first game. I said it here first. You heard it here first. I said it. They're going to lose their first playoff game, whoever it is they play. And it's looking like right now, whoever the 3rd seed is going to have to play the Cincinnati Bengals. I venture to say the Bengals would exact a measure of revenge from last year's game if that were to occur. But they just got to win. Next week, take care of business against Indianapolis. You have nothing to worry about.